Just One Thing for Parents. I'm Bettina Honan. Naomi Fisher joined me for this episode where we talk about screens. It's a topic that I've covered on quite a few episodes of my podcast, Just One Thing for Parents, because it's something that parents are struggling with a lot at the moment. So Naomi is a clinical psychologist. She's the author of many books, including one that just is about to come out called When the Naughty Step Makes Things Worse. She has such a refreshing point of view, and which is, I think, so helpful for parents. She writes and speaks particularly about trauma, autism, education, and she's got some really good online workshops and webinars. So I'd really recommend you look her up. But today she focused on screen time, which she says is not the thing that we should be focusing on with our children. We talk about why it doesn't work just to focus on screen time and a better way to manage the tricky world of screens and bringing up children. The focus here is more on the primary school years, the earlier years, not so much on teenagers. And as we've talked about on many other episodes, and Naomi and I talked about afterwards, there really is an issue with teenagers and social media at the moment, and we're not focusing on that so much here. But her approach makes so much sense, and I would really recommend anyone to tune in to this episode. So coming up now, my interview with Naomi Fisher. Naomi, thank you so much for joining me today. The question for you...
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, such a pleasure. The question for you, which is a topic that we've covered a little bit on this podcast, but the very specific question is, what is just one thing that parents can do to help their child develop a healthy relationship with screens?
Screens, such a hot topic. Always, I get asked about it more than anything else, I think. And I think, in fact, I'm going to kind of slightly cheat, because I think the number one thing that helps is to really move away from the idea of screen time. And I mean that both with the word screens and time. And that's why I say I'm cheating a bit, because I think this focus that we've got on screen time focuses our minds on two things. One is the screen, which is literally a sheet of glass, if you really think about it. And the other is time. How much time are they spending on it? And I think particularly when children are young, often everything is focused on how much screen time are they getting, or they're getting too much screen time. And I think it really distracts parents from what I think really matters, which is what are they doing on it? And how are they building their relationship with what they're doing on it? So we would never say that we are worried about how much paper time our children are getting. We would never say, oh, they're reading, they're drawing, they're writing, they're looking at the crossword puzzle, so much paper time. How do I limit their paper time? You're laughing just at the idea, aren't you?
Yeah.
But to me, the whole idea of screen time is similar. It's the sheet of glass that we're referring to. And when my children were small, I remember thinking, is it actually the screen of the glass that we're thinking causes damage in some way to our children, that we have to limit the glass? Or is it what's going on behind the screen, which we might want to think about? So, and I think the screen time and parenting fascinates me, because screens are the one area of parenting. I talk a lot in my work about kind of, in quotes, good parenting. And I mean this kind of cultural concept we all have of what a good parent does, how a good parent behaves. And I think screens are the one area where if you've got a child who really likes spending time on a screen, and someone asks you how you deal with it as a parent, the kind of good parenting answer is, I don't get involved. I think it's a waste of time. Or I try and get them away from it as much as possible. Whereas if you've got a child who's really into reading or sports or music, and they say, I love doing it, the good parent, in quotes, would be, out them cheering them on, or paying for music lessons and getting involved. But with screens, the kind of good parent doesn't get involved. And I talked to a family just like 2 weeks ago. The child really likes playing video games, and the dad said, I really like playing video games as well, but I don't play with my child because I don't want to encourage them, because I want them to get away from it. And I thought, how sad that he's really taken on that message. Screen time is bad. A good parent stops their child from playing on video games. So they've lost that time of connection. They've lost that chance for a kind of shared interest. And I think that focus for parents is really damaging for children in a number of ways. But one is that it promotes a disconnect between children and their parents around what they do on
Couldn't agree
screens.
with you more. So what you're saying is that people come with this almost black and white idea. With anything else,
Yeah.
there's nuance and there's interest and there's curiosity. But when it comes to screens, it's almost like it's a panic of, I have
Yes,
to,
totally a panic.
yeah,
Yes, like
yeah,
it makes you feel like a bad parent, doesn't it? When you see your
yes,
child on a device and you can
yes.
see other people going, oh, there is so much negativity about it.
A
Electronic
judgment.
babysitters,
Yeah.
neglectful parents. If you take your child along to a restaurant and you have an iPad with them so that they can just have a bit of time doing that so you can actually talk, you'll get
Mm.
people looking at you and people will be like,
Yes.
oh, why is that? Those parents don't teach their children how to behave. It's got a whole set of
Oh, so
ramifications
true.
about whether you're a good parent or a bad parent.
Mm.
And I think that really stops us from looking behind that sheet of glass to ask, what are they doing on
Mm.
those screens? Because I do think there are some really great things that children do on devices, and there are some not so good things. And actually, lumping all those things together, the screen time, doesn't help any of us.
Yeah.
Because once you've promoted that disconnect between children, once you've created this mindset where I don't want my child to be on their screen, no matter what they're doing, it's a bad thing. I want them to only spend 30 minutes a day, even if it's very clearly the thing that they enjoy most in the world and that they are most alive when they're doing it. I'm still going to limit it because that's what good parents do. You've immediately set up this situation where they're going to hide it from you. And
Yeah.
they're going to pretend that they're not on it. Then they're going to look guilty about it. And they're going to kind of hide it when they see you coming in the room.
Yeah.
And that isn't what you want as they grow, because you
Mm.
need to promote openness about what's going on there, because there will be things that you want to know about and you want to
Yeah.
intervene. And
Yeah.
what I see now with the families I work with is that there's this real intense focus on screen time when they're younger, limiting it, a disconnect between what they're doing and what the parents are doing with them. And then as they get a bit older, they get a smartphone, often quite young, and suddenly all holds it, they are basically free to be on this screen as much as they want, but also the parents haven't built that relationship with, let's talk about what's going on
Yeah.
this device. Let's
Yeah.
talk about what you're doing. How do the different things make you feel? Because some things you might do on your device might be great. I
Yeah.
write my books on a computer, all screen time. I read books on a Kindle. I talk to my family on Zoom. All
Yeah.
of those things are screen time. And then there are other things which are going on which aren't so great.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be looking beyond the glass, and we need to be looking beyond time to think, what are they doing there? And how can I do more of that with them? How can I connect with them? How can I make this a place like other areas of their life, really?
Yeah.
And how can I, because we want our children to learn how to regulate themselves and certainly to regulate their own screen time as they grow up. And we don't really achieve that if we have this attitude, this is something I'm not going to do with you, and this is something I am going to strictly limit.
And I always think it must be very confusing for a child if they feel so passionate and love something so much,
Yeah.
and the person that they love the most
Love
as well,
most.
their parent,
Yeah.
will not discuss it, will not
Yeah.
join them, will not validate their
Or
experience
tells them it's a
of,
waste of time.
yes, and
I
just
just think,
actually
yeah.
feels a bit irritated whenever they're
Yes.
on it.
Yes, you feel a sense immediately. You can imagine it, can't you? What it feels like
Yeah.
for that child. I think it does fit a disconnect. And I often work with Eliza Fricker, who's an illustrator, and she did a lovely illustration of that, of a child sitting on a beanbag, playing a game, looking really happy. And the parent is sitting over there, and in their head, it's like, oh my goodness, too much screen time. I'm a bad parent. They're going
Yeah.
to end up addicted. All these words that really exacerbate anxiety.
Yes.
And I think that, unfortunately, I think marketers have seen that in parents and they exploit that. So I get ads popping up all the time on my social media, that kind of thing, telling me of ways I can distract my children from being on screens.
Right.
I get things like, just buy this toy and my child stop spending their time on their iPad. And it's like, this is so blatant. You are just
Yeah.
using people's fear to sell them stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is really, I think it's very unhelpful for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I think what you're saying is that when you don't validate and join them in those early years, or begin
yeah.
to have a discussion and say, what is it you find interesting? Was there a
Yeah.
time when, you felt like, you'd been there too long, or I don't know,
Yeah,
what did you read? Or
exactly.
then when they
Yeah,
get to the teenage years, when they have it on this phone, the whole world basically
yeah,
available to them, they don't have a habit of coming to you or thinking you'll
exactly.
even be open to discussing it with them.
That's right. Or else they think that you're going to come in with limits. So you'll
Yes.
say, you mustn't, well, you're too much on that phone. So, for example, if they start
Yeah.
talking about social media and how it makes them feel, they're worried that you're going to come in immediately with the kind of restrictive
Yeah.
approach, because that's what you've done in the past. Yeah. So I think the roots of teenagers is always very much in our young children. And
Mm.
people will often say, I think one of the challenges of having young children, there are many, but one of the challenges is that we the things that they do often do seem a bit like a waste of time to
Yes.
parents.
Yes.
So one of the things, so parents will sometimes say to me, because I talk a lot about Minecraft, I played a lot of Minecraft with my children when they were young,
Oh,
and
did
people
you?
will sometimes, did you? It's a
Yeah.
great game,
Is it?
Minecraft, isn't it? I
Wow.
really miss those days. They were such fun. But parents will sometimes say to me, I wish my child would play this kind of worthwhile game like Minecraft, but all they want to do is watch YouTube videos. And I just cannot see the point. And even then I'll say, sit with them, watch what they're
Mm.
watching and see
Mm.
what they're getting out of it. Because
Mm.
my children, my daughter in particular, who's a bit younger, went through a very intense stage of surprise egg videos. I don't know if your children
No,
went
I
through this
didn't.
stage.
No.
Oh my goodness, there are millions of videos on YouTube of people opening surprise eggs. Those eggs you can buy, like Kinder Surprise, but there are whole sets of different eggs. Loads of videos, people opening eggs, going, oh, look what's inside. When my daughter was like quite young, 2 or 3, she just loved these surprise egg videos. And I was like, honestly, these are some of the most boring videos I've ever seen. But then I thought, what's going on at that age developmentally?
Mm.
Children are learning that things aren't always as they seem, aren't they?
Right.
They're learning that
Yes.
the developmental leap that's going on is something might be there, even though I can't see it. And so, of
Yes.
course, these surprise egg videos are like
Yes.
fascinating. So I sat there with her and we watched surprise egg videos together. And then because I was watching them with her, we were able to make that an interest. So we actually made our own surprise eggs. We would do them out of plasticine, we would hide toys, we would open them up, we'd go, oh, look. And it became a kind of inspiration of
Yeah.
other play, other things that we did,
Yeah.
rather than being something that I worried about. And I did worry a bit about the surprise egg videos because I was just like, I honestly cannot see what's good in these, but
Right.
they had value to her.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that's what's important, isn't it? That as
Yeah.
parents, we do that. We try to value what our children value. Like, when they
Yeah.
have a old ratty soft toy that is really smelly and has been dragged around, but it's really important to them,
Mm.
we value it for them. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something really important about our gaze that the children see my parent sees the value in the things that I see value
Yeah.
in.
And you brought it into the real world. That's
Yeah.
such a lovely, lovely example.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm aware of time. I feel
Yeah.
like we could talk about this for so long, and I just love the way you talk about it because it's so real and so helpful for parents. I suppose it would be great. I just want to ask the question for the parent that's sitting there saying, yeah, but what do I do? Because if I
Hmm.
leave my child and don't think about screen time, they will just be on there forever. What would you say to that?
Yes. Well, I'll say if you have been strictly limiting screen time, that is almost certainly exactly what will happen.
Yeah.
Because one of the effects that we know that happens if you limit something is that when the limits get a bit looser, there's this kind of what I call a bounce back effect. Basically, we know that happens with everything. If you strictly control sugar, for example, with your
Mm.
children, I've met so many parents who's like, we have a sugar-free house at home, we never have refined sugar, and then when they go to a birthday party, oh my goodness, all they want to do is eat the sugar.
Yeah.
And you get this problem with, I think it's a kind of basic human thing, just if something's restricted, you want to do it more.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that probably is often the case. So there are a couple of things that I suggest. One is find out what they're doing and make whatever they're using a high quality learning environment for them. So often parents who are kind of disconnecting from it and saying it's a waste of time, when I ask them what are your children actually doing on their screen, they don't know. Either they don't know, or they say things like they're just playing the free games because I won't pay for games.
Mm.
The free games are rubbish. on every level. They are really poor gameplay, but also because you're not paying for them, they need to keep you watching. So they'll show you loads of adverts. They'll want you to pay to upgrade, all of that kind of thing. So actually a big moment for me was when I realized my son had all these free games and they were not making anybody happy. We actually deleted all the free games and I looked very carefully for games that I could pay for, which were good, which were high quality games. And there's loads of people writing lists on the internet, great games for 8-year-olds. Have a look, play them, try them out, and then make that iPad or whatever device it is a really high quality learning environment for your child. And then you will feel better about it immediately.
Yeah.
But as well, I think it's important to just recognize that process, that they will often go through a time when they'll be like, I just want to play this all the time. And then they will start to regulate, particularly if you get in there with them and play with them and join with them. And actually, I say to parents, it's great if they can learn the skills of regulating themselves on a screen at age of 8, 9, 10,
Yes.
for example, because I do meet people who leave home and then it's the first time in their lives that they've had free access. And it's a lot more tricky to learn to self-regulate at that stage because you have to work and you have to pay the rent and you have to cook your meals and all of that sort of thing. So I always say to parents, childhood and being a teenager, they're time to practice things in a safe environment. And although it's hard to see as a parent, actually, if they can learn those skills now, saying, you know what, I've had enough, or you know what, I need to move my body now. Great if they can learn that when they're child rather than adulthood. And the other thing I do, a very practical thing actually that I often suggest to parents, is make it easy to move your body whilst you are on a screen. So you can't, people will often say, I'm really worried about them. They're not moving. They're just sort of sitting there all the time. So I say, okay, so let's say right now they're really into their, whatever it is, their console, their things. How could you make your living room into a space that's really easy to move in? So we actually have a mini trampette in our living room, like, a little trampoline, exercise trampoline. In the past, we've had a swing in the door frame. We have had, and it's absolutely always been all right to kind of jump on the sofa. We have destroyed a sofa, but we're now past that stage. Having cushions on the floor, making it bean bags, having exercise balls so that they can move. It's easy to move whilst they're playing something, because actually often children, when they're really playing something, they love to move.
Yes,
they're jumping up and down and pressing around, and if you can just let go of the worry about the sofa cushions shouldn't be on the floor, then that can often mean that you can again let go of that worry a bit. And you can do that again too. Like I started off, like we'd had the little mini trampoline, I would go into the front room and have a bounce, and I would maybe watch TV and bounce. So I would be showing them we can do these two things at the same time. It doesn't have to be either or.
So brilliant. So I feel like there's more than one thing. Just to finish, if you could say the one thing to summarize it in one sentence, what would it be?
Join with your children.
Yes.
Find out what they're doing and do more of it with them.
Amazing. Naomi, thank you so much for sharing today. It's going to be so helpful for so many families. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.